melting occurred at the 13th hour, the direct result of a bucket of water thrown by a female child. My name is Matthew Kroll.
And I don't cause commotions. I am one. My name is Shahir Dowd.
I'm through accepting limits because someone says they're so. And I'm Nick Lowe.
And this is the only podcast about movies, specifically the film Wicked. Or if we're going to say it where I'm from, Wicked.
Wicked. Wicked smart. Wicked smart.
That's what the second one's going to be called, is Wicked Pissa. Nick, welcome to the show.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to be on. Big fan. Happy to be here.
Well, this is kind of a, Matt says this sometimes as well. There's like a conflation of like your personal and your professional life.
Yeah.
And this is a case because your son and my son have been best friends in school for the better part of 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
In fact, there was a funny moment where we found a video of a moment where my son was dancing at a beer garden, and in the background, another kid starts dancing with him, and it's your son.
Yeah.
And so before they even knew each other, they were kind of like Glinda and
they shared a dance.
Yeah, they shared a dance, an
A
alphabet.
secret terrible dance.
A secret terrible dance.
But great too.
But it's not just the fact that you are that our kids are besties, and we have. By the way, our kids have life plans for.
It's true.
Has your son told you about the mansion?
Oh, they have many plans.
They have many plans.
Office plans. Game plans.
They're starting companies. They're going to be engineers. They're going to build a mansions with two sides of it, which each of them are going to live in. But they did say there was room for us, by the way. So essentially, it's almost like we're going to be brother-in-law at some point.
I know, it's so true. Well, I mean, my whole family's counting on him to make millions of dollars.
Yeah. One of them.
Yeah, exactly.
The best insurance plan.
But that's not the only reason you're here. It's not. We don't just invite our friends onto the show.
All the time.
All the time. I'm going to read from your Wikipedia page for a second, if that's okay.
I guess.
But Nicholas Lowe is the Vice President of Content, Digital Publishing, and Executive Editor of Marvel Comics. He was formerly the Senior Editor of the X-Men titles. He was responsible for the Next Wave title along with the Eternals by Neil Gaiman. And you grew up on the west side of Cleveland during high school. You attended the prestigious St. Ignatius High School, where you participated in school plays and musicals. And you attended the Catholic University of America, majoring in drama.
It's true.
And this is a major factor of your fame in my household. And we told my son this the first time you told us this, is that you're Spider-Man's boss.
It's true.
You are Spider-Man's boss,
I'm
right?
Spider-Man's boss.
You are one step above J.J. Jameson.
Yeah, I'm his boss too.
You're his boss.
Canonically, Spider-Man disappoints a lot of bosses.
Oh, he does, but he never disappoints me.
That's good. Not the top one. Yeah.
I expect for him to mess everything up.
Right. It's his job, technically, to mess up all of the bosses below you.
If he isn't causing me emotional stress, something is wrong.
That's right. Yeah.
But you started as an intern at Marvel.
I did.
And have been there for a very, very long time. Can you tell us just a little bit about because that's kind of, I think for a lot of people, the dream journey. You started the company very young.
Yep.
And then worked your way through, and now you're Spider-Man's boss.
So I applied for an internship between my sophomore and junior year. I even orchestrated an interview. They didn't interview interns at the time, but I begged for one.
Yeah.
And my girlfriend lived in Connecticut, and so we went there for spring break, and we went into Manhattan, went up to the office, interviewed with this bewildered internship coordinator who had 3 other jobs, and I didn't get the internship, and I was crestfallen, crushed. And then I applied one more time during my junior year. And I didn't think I'd get it because I didn't force an interview this time. How would I get it this time? Yeah. And I got it that time. They told me I could come in 2 days a week. I had nothing else to do. I was here making no money. There was an unpaid internship at that time.
Yeah.
So I came in 5 days. No one told me not to. So I started intern. I endeared myself with some people. I got hired. One of them, Nancy DeCasian, told me to tell her when I graduated, and I told her when the date was coming. I started work there 2 days after I graduated college.
Yeah.
And now it's 22 and a half years later.
And this is before Marvel is the Marvel that we kind of know now.
It's before Marvel Studios.
Well, it's the Marvel that I knew.
Yeah. This is post-bankruptcy, but I started working with Marvel Knights, which was Joe Quesada and Jimmy Palmiotti's kind of side company that before he became editor-in-chief. He was editor-in-chief when I started there, but it was still kind of a Marvel Knights thing. But I was at the Marvel Knights, and then I was in the Ultimate office. I got to work on Ultimate Spider-Man, the Ultimates, Ultimate FF, Ultimate X-Men, all that kind of stuff. And then I moved to the X-Men office for 8 years, and I've been on Spider-Man for about 10 years.
I believe some of your work is probably right below there behind some of the other things. But there's a lot. That's a whole Spider-Man shelf in the back.
Love it. Yeah. Love it. I think that's a lot of Steve Wacker love down there. But it's still good stuff.
It's behind all the other things.
It's great stuff. Yeah. It's great stuff. Spider-Man the best fictional character of all time.
You think so?
Sorry, Alphabet. Oh yeah, 100%.
Well, it's interesting because this movie is kind of crosses some lines between Disney and Marvel, and the question mark here is that Marvel's really thought about Spider-Man like Mickey Mouse, right? Like in terms of like the value of a property.
Well, I mean, he is in the same way that Mickey Mouse is the symbol of Disney.
Yeah,
Spider-Man is the symbol.
Right.
But they didn't approach. I wouldn't say they approached it like that. I mean, that would take, I think, on both sides a little more calculation than was ever given.
Right. I think Mickey was more Disney really pushed that narrative. And I think Spider-Man, at least from an outsider's perspective, that came to be the truth through public opinion and love of the character and associating it with the brand.
It was an accidental hit.
Yeah,
it was Martin Goodman. Stan had some success with Fantastic Four. He wanted to do this Spider-Man character. And Martin Goodman was like, no one, spiders are gross. No one wants a superhero with spiders. They're gross. And Stan, but even more, I would say perhaps Steve Ditko with his design and what he brought to the character. In Amazing Fantasy 15, it was the final issue. It ended up being the final issue of that series. They'd hoped to go further, but it was canceled. But then it took off and was a huge hit that forced them to make the Amazing Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. And it quickly built over the first couple years to be the biggest character at Marvel. Like ended up eclipsing even the Fantastic Four, which was the biggest at the time.
Yeah.
And then it is the epitome of what Marvel did was a character, a great core character that was consistently reinterpreted in brilliant ways. Because I mean, the name Spider-Man is a goofy name,
right?
It's a goofy name. It's Spider-Man. There's nothing. It is all the stories that were told with him throughout. It's now 64 years.
Yeah.
But at least every 10 years, there's an all-time great story told with Spider-Man that makes him an indelible part. Because it's not just Stan and Steve and John Romita. It's Todd McFarlane. It's Jerry Conway, Todd. I just said Todd McFarlane. J.M. DeMattison. Anyway, I'm spending too much time. But Spider-Man's awesome, and very personal, like Mickey was to Walt and stuff like that. But it's I would say probably even more consistently held up through these 62 years. There's never been a time.
And I'll tell you this, I do not have 3 Mickey Mouse costumes somewhere in this house. I do have 3 different Spider-Man suits somewhere in
just
this
hiding
house.
out in case you need them.
I need them.
Like one slung up on backpacks.
I went to PAX West one year, and I one of the days we were speaking there, but I was going to cosplay another day, and I have a pretty decent suit from the Spider-Man 2 Tobey Maguire phase. And I brought it, and I took it in a briefcase, and I put that in my case, and I had a note in it. And I just put at the top in case the TSA went through it. That was please don't tell anyone. And when I opened my case up, the note had a smiley face drawn on it, and I was like, great, okay,
amazing.
Yeah.
So we'll tell, but we made a pact before we started this podcast.
We did.
We weren't going to talk too much about Marvel.
Yes,
because we are here for the musical theater side of it and the wicked of it all.
Yep. There was a Spider-Man musical.
There was.
What did you think of the Spider-Man musical?
It was insane.
Yeah. This was the one with lyrics by Bono. Is that right?
Yeah, Bono and the Edge did the music and the lyrics.
Yeah, Julie Taymor directed it. Yeah,
it was one of the most bonkers things I've ever seen in my entire life.
Turn off the dark.
Yeah. But I will say this:
the flying effects were
for all anyone could say about it. We were given great seats.
Yeah,
I went with some Marvel folks, and when Spider-Man and the Green Goblin were fighting above you in the theater, was one of the coolest moments of anything in my entire life. Because no movie can replicate that.
No,
nothing. You'll never. I mean, until maybe in the future they do. You'll get a VR Spider-Man movie, but you are walking through the Marvel universe and see. It was one of the coolest things. That moment was one of the greatest.
I regret
moments.
not going. I didn't get to see it. Yeah.
But I'm a music theater nerd.
Yeah,
I have been since I think someone gave my mom a greatest hits of Andrew Lloyd Webber when I was in the 8th grade.
Yeah.
I saw Phantom and they got obsessed with Phantom and Les Mis.
I got to see Phantom for the first time right before it closed. Whoa. I think it was like the last week and a half or something.
Yeah.
And it was
I haven't seen Phantom. I've only seen the Brian De Palma film Phantom of Paradise, really? Which is like sort of a sexy Phantom. Like,
how dare you?
The Phantom is
Phantom's always sexy.
There's no non-sexy Phantom.
Sometimes it comes from the voice you hear. It's not just the visage and the mask.
Who's sexier than Michael Crawford? Come on.
Well, and so as far as musical theater goes, you mentioned Phantom of the Opera. Like, what was, because maybe the one thing I'm trying to think of is how did the translation of a drama major end up at Marvel? Like, what was could you draw? Were you a storyteller? Were you just like, where did the crossover happen for you?
Well, I think I love epically dramatic stories.
Yeah.
I love huge, broad, epic, anything that will elicit the greatest emotion possible.
Right.
I love the melodrama. I love all that. And that's what Marvel comics are.
Right.
Melodrama. And that's what I love about these huge, and I love opera too. Like opera, I love all that stuff. But anything that's like huge, big emotions, elicits big emotions, like make me cry and I'm there. Like, I will forgive nearly anything. If you make me cry, I'm there. And I think that's why I both those things did that for me. And their storytelling and their collaborations. I did a lot of music theater as well. And it is so fun to do because it is such a team effort. And same thing with comics. Like comics, it's like 6 people are the main people who make a comic. In music theater, it's more than that, obviously. But it's usually when you're putting on a show, it's not that many more. And it's you got to do it. And same thing with when we're making comics on a, twice a month for Amazing Spider-Man or something like that. Like you got to get it done no matter what. And so in music theater too, you got a show date. You got to get it done. You don't just, the show must go on.
Yeah. And that thrill kind of still stays alive.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I love going to see musicals. I love music. I love the Disney.
You
musicals.
also sing, right?
I do. I sing all the time.
Yeah.
Ask my kids. Ask my wife.
Not just singing in the shower. Not just singing in the shower.
No. Yeah, I sing it.
You'll have to come to the next karaoke. I do a karaoke party for my birthday.
Good.
Come on down,
please.
One of the things I love about Nick as well is that when we've been to the movies quite a few times in the last few years, because you're very busy as well. You have 3 kids.
I do,
and a dog, and so it's hard for you to get to the movies. But when we do go to the movies, I think I've mentioned this on the podcast without mentioning you by name.
Sure.
But you watch a movie with your whole body.
I do.
Like it's it is a full body experience when you go to the movies with Nick, and I love it because my biggest memory of Avatar. Of The Way of the Water was watching it with you because you were so excited during that movie. You were like, it was like a little kid watching the movie. You were like pushing me when something fun happened. Man. You were laughing out loud. You really, it's a full body experience.
It is. And that's like everything with me. I can't help it. I wear my emotions on my sleeve. But I love a movie that can take me someplace. I love a story that can take me someplace. And spoiler alert, Wicked took me some places, guys. Wicked took me some
good places.
Yeah, well, mostly good. Mostly good places.
So before we move on to Wicked, very briefly, what about because you and I are part of a dad's film group, and we talk about movies a lot. But what are some of your first loves when it comes to movies?
I mean, I remember going to see Back to the Future and then going out to dinner with my family after. I can remember where we sat in the restaurant and it was at a place that had one of those those red plastic baskets under the cheeseburger that you get.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the Star Wars movies, of course.
Yeah.
Like action, adventure, Indiana Jones, all that stuff. I was born in 79. So like the 80s, like any 80s. I remember seeing Aliens way too young.
Yeah.
I think I was in maybe 5th grade if I'm lucky.
Yeah.
And watching Aliens on VHS. And my mom was probably like, is Nicholas down there? My dad's like, I don't think so. But I was like, what is happening? And we had HBO growing up. And so I watched way too many inappropriate movies as they were coming out. But I love movies. And then I had a great high school teacher, Rich Fujimoto in St. Ignatius, who my junior year, one of the movies he showed our class was Chinatown.
Oh wow!
And he mainly wanted to he would sit there and watch it with us, and then he'd be grading papers. But then
was he aware of what the movie was?
Yeah, it's one of his favorite movies. We studied it in the class, in this English class.
Okay,
but I remember him bringing his chair towards the screen and sitting in positioning just in time for
the reveal.
And just watching these juniors in high school be like, minds get blown. Because like that's not a movie that like at least for kids gets culturally spoiled like so many things.
It's weird, right? Nobody reveals what her character is, Faye Dunaway's character, what her heritage. Yeah.
And like it blew our minds. And then I took a film class with him. Like I studied, like I did a thing on Kubrick.
Yeah.
And that was awesome. And like, so he pushed me towards studying, studying movies and studying cinema. And I loved it. And my buddies and I, we were a bunch of theater nerds. We made movies.
Yeah.
Like we had, every time there was a project in class where you could make a movie, we would make one, and they would get every year that passed more and more extravagant. We'd have our 2 VCR systems to edit the movie, put in a soundtrack. One kid got into Mike Tipple got into computer graphics and built the most extravagant credit scenes.
Yeah.
It was just wild. But yeah, but I love movies. I've loved them. When I first came to New York, I watched a bunch of great movies in college. I remember going to see Memento in Washington, D.C. Especially once I moved here, a buddy of mine, Andy Schmidt, and we started going to movies all the time. And we had this early in our time. This was in 2002, maybe 2003. But they were playing Decalogue at the Lincoln Plaza.
Oh, right. The Krasnowski films.
It was a weekly. They played 2 episodes every week. And so we'd go there and then we'd go after and discuss it and stuff like that. And I more vividly, cinematic moments burned into my brain. Into these things. And I love, and it's so funny. The dopamine rush you get when a filmmaker shows you new tricks you haven't seen before. One of my favorite things that we went and saw, Shahir, was we went and saw Poor Things. I'd never seen a Yorgos movie before.
Yeah.
And that movie blew my mind. I had so much dopamine firing from the insanity of that movie. And I was not prepared for what that movie was.
I think you've mentioned that a couple of times as being the high point of the movies we've gone to together.
That's a good high point.
And Way of the Water. It's up there. But Poor Things, and I love artsy fartsy.
I remember when we came out of it and you were so excited, and we had what I loved about it was that you and I sat in a car for probably half an hour and had the kind of conversations you have when you're 20 years old or when you're 18 years old. It was just this passion for what we had just seen and a real excitability for it as well. Because I think you're right. You hadn't seen something like that in a while, or you hadn't seen something that was new.
Well, and especially that the vision involved with it. And again, we're all products of everything we've seen, everything we love.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I love about filmmakers and about, and art. And of course, and it's not just Yorgos, it's his whole staff, his, creative team. And the thought of all of the things that team loves brought together in a way that in a concoction that I'd never experienced before.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about all these things and when visionaries get together and they make something that's better than anything they could make on their own and with influences that haven't been concocted like that before.
The other thing with Poor Things, and we should get on to Wicked, is that it is all of those things, but it is also entertaining.
Oh, yeah.
That's a surprising thing about it, because we talked about Kubrick, you mentioned Kubrick before. One of the complaints about Kubrick is that his films are alienating or they're cold and distant.
Some are.
Yeah. And the thing about Yorgos that was really exciting was that it was new, but it was also just fun to watch.
It invites you to be there. No matter how horrific or weird it gets, it actively invites the viewer to be a part of it. He's playing with
the audience.
Yep. And it's funny and it's fun. We also saw Kinds of Kindness, which I also thoroughly enjoyed. It's a very different movie, and one shouldn't compare.
It's the B-side.
It's apples and oranges, right? But it is not as fun as Poor Things. It's challenging in different ways, but it's not that it's a very different experience and an incredibly valuable one that I loved.
I remember also you and I went and saw Fall Guys.
We did.
And we had the exact same response to the movie. We were both like, what a smug movie. We just really didn't like that movie.
Monsters.
And it was weird because I thought that because it was just you and I thought, oh, maybe this is the critical consensus on the movie. Or maybe this is a shared experience. But it turns out it was just you and I who felt that way.
Nick, be honest. Did she bring you here just to have someone else to argue with you about the
to join me on the Fall Guys conversation?
It's possible. But we do differ.
We do differ. Yeah, there's a couple of movies that I think we've had the exact opposite opinion on. Again, before we get to Wicked, but we did Marvel movies at my house over the weekend, over the Thanksgiving break, and we watched. My son wanted to skip over all the entire MCU timeline. He just wanted the Avengers movies, so we watched Avengers, Age of Ultron, and Infinity War. And I gotta say, watching those three back to back, I kind of love Ultron.
It's great.
Ultron's good.
I was like, Ultron good? Ultron real good?
Yeah.
Like. And I was like, Ultron better than Avengers? I think I'm kind of there.
No. I wouldn't go there.
No.
But it's not far behind.
Yeah.
And I mean, and nothing is for me like Infinity War is the pinnacle.
It's
maybe
it's the Empire Strikes Back
of existence, perhaps. Who knows? Yeah. It is the Empire Strikes Back. In the same great. So anyway. But Wicked.
but Wicked. Okay.
And I was hoping it was a documentary about Boston slang, but it wasn't.
It's not. Sadly, no.
Yeah.
I don't know if this was your guys' experience as well. This the weekend, Thanksgiving weekend, has been dubbed Glicked because of the Gladiator 2
don't see it. I know everyone's looking for it.
Yep.
Everyone's having a great time since Barbenheimer. Yep. But I have to admit, when I went to our local theater, the Regal Kaufman Astoria, I was actually very pleased with the fact that both three, Wicked, Gladiator 2, and Moana were all there. And it felt like everyone was catered to.
Everyone had a movie.
And the movie theater was packed.
Yeah. Stone Cold hits.
Yeah. It was just really bustling. Like that movie theater I usually go to on a Monday or Tuesday night, and there is not a soul. You know, like especially when we go see something like Kinds of Kindness, I'll be in there by myself. So it was really, as much as I on this podcast have talked about Deadpool and Wolverine kind of just dominating that theater for 1 week or 2 weeks or something like that. It was actually kind of cool just to see the movie entirely packed out and not just by one demographic. Like there were kids running around. There were, older men there to see Gladiator 2. A lot of people there to see Wicked. So it was kind of it was a big box office weekend for the movies. I felt like the movies were back.
Nick, where did you see the film?
I saw it at the Kaufman Astoria as well. I went with my entire family and my sister-in-law, who is a theater professional.
Yeah.
She's a company manager on Broadway, huge music theater nerd as well. It's one of the things we bonded over. And so we went, I saw it as it was meant to be seen with a preteen girl, right near me, and getting to live it through her eyes, and it was magical.
Hell yeah! I ended up seeing it at the IMAX at Lincoln because the screenings at Lincoln, that tends to be where I go, were just sold out for all week, and I was just scanning through, and on I think Tuesday at 3:30, there was one seat someone must have canceled at like the perfect point in the IMAX theater. I'm like, well, I mean, it was pretty good. It was an enveloping experience, especially with the music and everything. I have not been to an IMAX musical.
I don't think I have ever been.
And it was excellent. There was one part in one of the later songs where it had to be like 6 milliseconds. The audio cut.
Oh no!
And the whole theater went, whoa! And then it came back, and everyone was back in it. And I actually kind of think of it as a badge of honor for that moment. Like that is something that could knock a group out and have them be like, well, that's what we're thinking about. But it was this glitch in the matrix. And then everyone was just right back in.
It's like one of those moments on a plane where you hit that pocket.
Well, it's like Tyler Durden inserting a frame into the movie or something like that. Tell us what Wicked is about, but and after we do that, you mentioned Preteen Girl. We actually have a voice memo from your daughter.
It's true.
Who went to that movie, and I'd love to hear her opinion after we hear what Gladiator is about.
Gladiator?
I mean, she went to see Gladiator, right?
Yeah. She did do Gladiator.
That's what we're here for.
Huge Denzel fan.
Wicked, as described to us by the Internet Movie Database, says Elphaba, a misunderstood young woman because of her green skin, and Glinda, a popular girl, become friends at Shiz University in the land of Oz. After an encounter with the wonderful Wizard of Oz, their friendship reaches a crossroad.
Ooh.
That seems like almost two descriptions. We tend to I should rephrase. I tend to rate the IMDb blurb at the top. This accurate, but doesn't really get me and kind of hiccups a little bit. It had that moment of the plane. I'll give it a 6.5.
Okay. Well, what does our young friend think about the movie?
Hi. My review on Wicked is I really liked it. I would give it 5 stars. I really love how they broke apart some of the songs in the musical to have like little separate scenes in the middle of them. And I thought that was like really fun. And I really think Cynthia Erivo did a really good job of playing Elphaba, and Ariana Grande was super good at playing Glinda. They were both perfect for the roles, and I am really, really, really excited for part 2 to come out next year, and I am going to see it in theaters. I just love this movie so much.
There we go.
Well, do we need to say anything else?
I think we're done.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious, like father, like daughter, what did you think of Wicked, Nick?
I thoroughly enjoyed it. Now, it's got a lot of things going for it, right?
Okay.
A great high concept. Mm-hmm. You take a seminal piece of pop culture and you turn it on its head. You take The Wizard of Oz and you tell it from a different perspective, or at least you tell the story of part of that world from a different perspective. You flip it on its head. So I think conceptually, super strong. Obviously, it's a Gregory Maguire book that I've heard is real weird. I have not read it. And then there was the Broadway musical, which I saw 20 years ago, and I don't remember it super. I remember liking it okay.
Okay.
I remember...
It's a cultural phenomenon.
Cultural.
That show.
It's been around for more than 20 years.
Yeah.
It is... I will say this. It is one of those weird shows, in my opinion, that, like West Side Story, mm-hmm. the songs are incredible. Mm-hmm. The music is incredible. And the music is better than the show, just like West Side Story. For me, like the music in West Side Story might be some of the greatest works of song in music and music theater history. I think Wicked, especially this first act, is right up there with it. And the ending song, Defying Gravity, is one of the greatest songs ever written. And I'll come back to that later because I also have a beef.
Okay.
I've got a beef with Defying Gravity in this movie. But Stephen Schwartz wrote this music, wrote the lyrics. Can I give a little music theater background?
Yeah. Hit us.
Music theater. He wrote Pippin. Was his first one. I think he even may have written that in college as he was coming out. He wrote Godspell. And he kept writing. He ended up coming in after Howard Ashman died on during the Disney heyday after Lion King. He wrote the lyrics for Pocahontas, right, and I believe Hunchback of Notre Dame as well. And his Pocahontas lyrics are phenomenal.
Right.
He is one of the finest musical thinkers. I think he did Prince of Egypt as well. I know. I don't think he did. I know he did. And his sense of melody and his lyrics are incredible. So that movie's got that going for it. It's got these unbelievable works of art as part of the core of it. And then I thought Ariana Grande was very good. I think she can, another thing, I'm incredibly critical of aspects of movie musicals. I think Shahir and I've talked about this. Not everyone loves La La Land, but La La Land was huge.
I did not love La La Land.
I did not like it.
Interestingly, watching Wicked made me appreciate La La Land more.
What? Opposite.
Right. Okay. Let's go. Let's go.
No, not opposite. Not opposite. I will say this. For me, my biggest beef with La La Land is that we live, especially in New York, but in this world, we live in a world where there are people who can dance and act and sing incredibly well. Yeah. And in La La Land, they got great actors.
Yeah. Okay.
Who could sort of dance and they could dance. They can dance better than me.
Yeah.
And they can sing.
But on this note, I do agree with you. Yeah.
So, I mean, as far as like a whole conception in a film, perhaps, don't get me wrong. Like it's solid, right?
Yeah.
But for me, like, why do a musical if you don't have people who are like excellent singers and excellent dancers? When you go to New York, you have an audition and find people who excel at all of these things, right? Mm-hmm. Anyway, for this one, Ariana Grande, incredible singer, right? Mm-hmm. I think she did a good job acting.
Yeah.
Cynthia Erivo,
yeah,
believable.
Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, one of the greatest living singers. That is just known. It is known.
I actually did not know this.
Okay.
I was unaware of this.
Yeah.
I bought Cynthia Erivo stock after the movie Widows. Which
Widows was it.
Which we reviewed on this podcast.
And she was also in Bad Times.
And she was in Bad Times as well.
And Harriet Tubman, right?
And she was in Harriet Tubman, which I hadn't seen. But
I haven't seen any of them.
And full name Bad Times at the El Royale. So,
but the thing about Cynthia Erivo in Widows, like I think my comment there was, if they do a recasting of Batman, she should play it.
Yeah.
Like and the thing I think I was responding to there was presence.
Yeah.
She has so much presence. Like she's on screen and you're like, I can't watch anybody else on screen. She's the only person I'm interested in.
And it's hard to...
that is an unquantifiable thing.
Oh, yeah. It's hard, in my opinion, to make someone like Elphaba as sort of a young college-age Wicked Witch of the West, or pre-Wicked Witch of the West, I should say, have that sort of like that feeling bubbling underneath. Like, well, I'm blanking on the original person who played her. Idina Menzel. Thank you. Like, don't get me wrong, she is an exquisite singer who destroys this thing. It's just it's beautiful. Yeah. But like, I've not seen it in person, but I've watched clips of it since seeing, because I'd never seen the musical. This was my first time with Wicked at all. Didn't see the musical, didn't see the book, anything. But like, every clip I've seen of her, she doesn't have what Cynthia does in this sort of like a complexity and a depthness where you see the turn, the eventual turn coming even under the surface, and not in a way of like, ooh, she's always bad, in a, wow, this person is going to react accordingly to her situation as it I don't know. There's a power, and there's sort of like
here is someone not to be trifled with.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, and
who's holding it back.
Yeah.
Beginning thinking she's holding it back for her sake, when really it feels more like it's to everyone else's benefit.
Interestingly, I haven't seen much of the Idina Menzel performance. I know she's amazing. She was in Uncut Gems as well that we discussed, but I know as far as musical theater goes, she is one of the queens of musical theater in New York City, and primarily because of this role. The interesting thing here is that what I was unsure of how the Broadway show would have handled is the racial dimension to casting Cynthia Erivo in this role, and the fact that the role is very particular in that she is an outsider to this community, and her greenness in this movie is commented on, addressed upon. She is a child who has grown up feeling like an outsider and who's addressed it continually. So I was really unsure. I actually quite liked that part of the story, and I wondered, I guess, if that racial dimension was a factor in the original Broadway show. Not
as powerfully as I recall. I mean, it's certainly subtextual, right? In the same way that, again, like, I'm sorry, there's so much Marvel in my brain. Like, mutants, is a racial thing. It's also like a sexual thing or a gender thing. Like, it can relate to all these things. I think there are elements. There were always elements of the other, of a minority situation. But it certainly reads more powerfully. With a black woman. In there, but I think she is unbelievable. Like, this is for my money, one of the finest film performances of any type I've ever seen, and it is certainly aided by the fact that she can sing her face off,
right?
And but also act like one of the coolest things about the part of Elphaba, right, is that it is, there's a huge range to it. Like, you've got like the Wizard and I moment, like that's a very poppy, like very like I Want song, like that's a classic music theater thing, like the I Want song, and then you get like I'm Not That Girl, like this ballad that and especially Cynthia Erivo in there, like she goes so internal with that, but then when she lets it loose on Defying Gravity, like it is so beautifully musically structured in this act structure of where you go, and she carries that movie in so many ways on her back, like a movie star should. And she's a movie star and like a one-of-a-kind performer for our times.
And she's also, oddly enough, I found this very strange, especially with, we're talking about like sort of the othering or any racial or other elements to this story because it's obviously very present there. She's actually the second African-American woman to play Elphaba. Alexia Kadaim, I believe is what it was the only one on Broadway.
Yeah.
I'm talking like Broadway. I'm sure there might be other people on tours
perhaps,
and things like that. But like,
and I believe that's pretty recent too.
Yeah. I want to say, it says right here, West End production from 2008 to 2010.
Yeah.
It seemed like Idina Menzel's performance would be closer in line with Margaret Hamilton in The Wizard of Oz, right? Like it would be leaning closer to that, whereas this felt like something entirely different.
I wouldn't say that. I mean, Idina Menzel, her performance, at least on the recording, I don't. Did I see Idina Menzel? I don't think so.
I guess what I'm saying maybe is that there was a more of a connection to the original movie, whereas this feels like it's something entirely different.
Maybe. I didn't. That's not my read on it. But,
okay,
but I'm not sure. Like I mean, the whole conception of it is. Like, you know, is the othering and you taking walking a mile in her shoes, right? And the her relationship with her father, like like her whole origin story, right? Like, I mean, all of that and what she goes through is just incredible, and she owns it so hard, and like even when she's running through the cornfield and but she just has so much depth to her performance and so much dimension and inner life. And like, you can't take your eyes off her when she's on that screen. And when she another thing about Idina Menzel's performance in the Broadway show is that her interpretations of these songs is really strong.
Yeah.
And very iconic of like the things that she improved in it, or like, you know, like her interpretations of it that have lived on through the Broadway show. And I think they do it on purpose, like, because it's but like Cynthia Erivo, like, so it is a high bar to pass.
Right.
Like it is iconic. It is a high bar to pass. And I think she cleared it. And that is saying something.
Yeah.
You know,
something I really, without getting too much into my full thought, something I really appreciated about this movie is in a world where we have so many remakes or redoings of stories, either from a different medium, or even sometimes what I'm thinking about specifically is like Disney live action movies, like or like even recently the DreamWorks the How to Train Your Dragon is like the exact same thing, but now there's just people, but the dragons look the same, and like that's fine, but like the originals of all of these movies are many of them are exquisite and they're good, and I understand from a business perspective why they're being made. They're being made to make money. That's fine. I have no problem with that. But I love it when something like Wicked, which is a cinematic adaptation of the musical, which is an adaptation of the book, which is an adaptation of the other, like it is an IP pyramid all the way down. This does, I truly feel, offer something new, whether it be a different take, and I agree. I think, even though again I can't fully agree because I haven't seen the musical, a greater take or an excellent bar that is cleared like for this before, like this has something to offer while giving you the original text. And so I appreciated that when I walked out of this movie, I was like, this feels elevated, even if I haven't seen the original thing this is based off of. I could tell by audience reaction. I could tell just by what I was seeing that this took to the medium that I was watching it in excellently. And I think both of those facts kind of raised it up a notch.
It gives more depth to it. And it's so rare that this happens, right? Like, I got to say, like, the Spielberg West Side Story might have done it too. Like, I thoroughly enjoyed that. And that's a tough nut to crack. And it might be the best version of that I've seen.
Sure.
Too, and but like some of it also took its time more, and this one may have taken too much time. But
here's the thing, so 1,000% on that. When I saw it was 2 hours and 40 minutes for part one, I was like, "Fuck you, man." I didn't mind it. I never was looking at my watch. I didn't care, and I wonder too if I'll get into this in a little bit. I have no idea before walking into this movie what the plot was. I knew they went to college together.
Okay.
That's what I knew.
Yeah.
And I have a theory on why that is. I'll get into later when I get to my main beef with this movie and the property in general. But maybe because I literally knew nothing. I didn't even know it ended with defying gravity. Yeah. I didn't know nothing. I was just like, this is great. Like, and I was not ever thinking, and I blinked and it was over. And I was like, oh, that's insane that this movie was able to take me for that amount of time and not make me think about anything outside of the theater. And that to me is, again, another victory lap for this thing.
There's one moment, or one section in it that I was like, no, one of my main beefs with it. And I'm a fan.
Let's not be coy. Tell us what your beef is.
Yeah, my beef is I'm a fan of a celebratory honorific cameo, right? Like I think it's great. It like, I can see why people might not like it. It might take them out of a story. This one, like the spirit behind having Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth in this movie, I love the spirit of it. They spent way too much time with him, and like they even had her sing the Idina Menzel sing whoa, like it was just like, it took me completely out of it, and it's like it is too much.
It's
too
funny.
much.
I feel like if I had seen the musical, I would 1,000% agree with you.
But
I didn't see the musical.
That's great to hear.
And it was just like, oh, I mean, I knew who they were. And I was oh, that's nice. They built a whole number to put them in here and tie it to the origin of Oz or magic or whatever. I was like, yeah, this works on a metatextual level, and felt like the normal length of a song. Whereas I think people very familiar seeing it as a cameo should be like, all right, keep it moving.
Let's move. Like enough. You had them there. Let's move on. Right. That was one of my major beefs about it. But I want to. I have a couple. Is it okay if I talk about some of the other things?
Go for it.
There's a part of me that thinks that the entire purpose for making this movie was to have Michelle Yeoh in the best wigs and costumes ever on a human. I don't know that a human has ever looked better than Michelle Yeoh looked in this movie. Her hair and her costumes looked so exquisite, and I thought she was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought she was phenomenal. Her part isn't the greatest.
Yeah.
But I thought her performance of it was incredible. And the hair and makeup and costume team like did her good.
Yeah.
Like she looked great.
Yeah.
And like and what she did with what she was given was phenomenal, I would say.
Yeah, so she is a sort of veteran with working with John Chu. She came over from Crazy Rich Asians, in which she had the best part in Crazy Rich Asians. So I kind of felt it was sort of that sort of celebratory. Here is the great performer. Now I did feel that the musical moments with her were. The movie is filled with theater kids, right? Like, and Ariana, there's no better theater kid than Ariana Grande in this movie. Really, really owning the role, which is a kind of a Mean Girls role. It reminded me of Rachel McAdams in Mean Girls.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The only thing is that I would say I think Ariana Grande is great in this, but it feels like she has maybe a couple movies to go before she really lives in a role.
Oh, sure. So I was going with the Rachel McAdams in Mean Girls because her character in Mean Girls is mean and revels in being mean, where I feel like Glinda, or Ariana Grande's Glinda, is mean, but in a I don't know I'm being mean. Like that's at least how it's portrayed. I
think what I'm getting at is the sort of timing of performances that Rachel McAdams has. Like she delivers the kind of quippy one-liners and snide remarks really well.
Copy.
And Ariana Grande, I think. That, so to me, those are the measurements that I was thinking about as I was thinking about Rachel McAdams in that movie and the way that she can deliver kind of a side eye line or something like that. And Ariana Grande is doing pretty great work here. She's not, she's obviously a fantastically accomplished seasoned performer. And this is not her first movie role, but
gotta be close to it. And she did Broadway.
Yeah, she's done so it really feels like a theater kid stepping into a movie.
I mean, she did Broadway when she was a child.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And she does really, really well here. Obviously, Cynthia Erivo has something there that crosses that boundary of theater kid to movie star as well. Yep. And that's a very difficult thing to kind of like quantify.
Yeah.
Question on the original is Glinda played very comically in
Kristen Chenoweth.
Kristen Chenoweth. And I will say,
and that's the Rachel McAdams thing as well, which is that it's like it's a comedy. It's a real comedy timing kind of thing that's really hard to get, that Rachel McAdams does so well.
Yeah. There's so much that Ariana Grande does well.
Yeah.
I would say hers, like, I think she's still finding her way as an actress.
It feels more like an affectation at this point.
I feel like she was like, afraid to get big in some places when she could have been. I mean, Kristen Chenoweth's performance is like one of the all-time great music theater performances. Like her Popular is incredible. Like I think she did a Tony Awards. You can find it online pretty easily.
I want to push back a little bit on Ariana Grande. I actually was far more impressed with her in this movie than I thought I was, but I think
she does well. Don't get me wrong. Yeah.
Here's the thing about Ariana Grande. I don't often pay attention to the things that she is doing, but when I do, I tune in and it becomes like, I was like, why am I not paying attention to this person? So the first time was on the Extra Credits channel. We did, there was a thing in Fortnite where they're doing, they do concerts in Fortnite sometimes. Your kids probably know this, and for 6 performances, and there were specific times, there was an Ariana Grande interactive show. And what it was it takes you through a couple levels designed around her music that you play through with other people at the show. You go through this stuff. There's all these different things. There's a couple different smaller bands in it. And you follow Ariana Grande while she's giving a concert in this thing, but you're in it. And the special thing about that, sorry, I'm going on a tangent, is that it's only 6 performances or whatever it was, and that it's done. You can't see that thing again. It's like going to a show.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't familiar with Ariana Grande. I wasn't really a fan of her music. But
I love her music.
But I do now, because when I did that, I was like, oh, I'm going to do this and make an episode out of it. And it got me thinking about, like, this is an artist that I feel like took what could ostensibly be a cash grab and turned it into, or I imagine, because I've seen some of the other shows and they're not this, turned it into something, or maybe her music or what she was doing played to it better.
Yeah.
That turned it into something that felt more akin, the most realistic thing I could put in a video game towards a live action concert event.
That's so cool.
And so I started paying attention to her then. Then I've seen her in recently on SNL. And I was kind of floored by how damn funny she is.
Yeah.
Like she is hilarious. And then when I saw this, while I find, and I think you're supposed to find the character of Glinda a little grating.
Yep.
I was shocked how much, especially with Cynthia's Elphaba, like, you just like does take the scenes as she is in them. It was almost like the perfect, like, I don't know, palette or flavor balance of what was going on, because there'd be a small moment or something from Ariana Grande that the character is trying to outshine Elphaba.
Yeah.
But she's not, but the performance is doing that work as well. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, she's not, totally. Ariana Grande's performance is not trying to outshine Cynthia's. Glinda is trying, the performance of Glinda is performing to outshine Elphaba. Like, and the balance is really nice.
I think to that end, I think in the original, I think Kristen Chenoweth was trying to outshine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a sort of friendly banter.
Yeah. And like, and I will say this too, like, I was not sure what to expect from her. I'm a fan of her music.
Yeah.
And I like it a lot. I think she's an amazing singer. And I was thoroughly impressed. I think there are places where she could have gone bigger, where I think she could, like, I think she was kind of maybe thinking it was a movie and she shouldn't go quite as big, or maybe that's just the takes they chose.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I will say, like, she had some true moments of vulnerability, which are hard to do. Mm-hmm. It is hard to be vulnerable in this big way. And I mean, I'm curious what everyone else thought about the dance scene, the scene at the Ozdust Ballroom.
Yeah.
They go there.
Dancing in probably
the Dancing Through Life. Then the dance, the Elphaba interpretive dance.
Yeah. Okay.
See, I'm curious what people thought about that.
So I haven't given my general thoughts on the movie yet, just very quickly.
Yeah, please.
One thing that I'm always going to find a challenge is the part 1 of this all. You know, like I thought about that in terms of like our Dune review. You know, there's a sort of sense that it's half of a movie, and to me, I think one of the issues here is that it's half of a movie that I felt could have been condensed as well. But I think what I'm coming at it from is not a person who is a big musical theater fan, so music numbers are difficult for me because they kind of take me out of the movie most of the time, and one where I have an appreciation for the audience that loves this movie, because the appreciation for the audience that loves this movie loves the musical, and I think the movie is kind of staged for that audience. And in a sense, the part 1 and part 2 of it is staged like the first part and an intermission, and then we're going to come back for the second part. So it kind of feels like that. Because to me, the other thing is that as far as the story goes, I did a thing, which is that after I'd seen the movie, I found myself not that engaged by the entire experience and kind of little middle on the whole thing. But I did think that I was trying to find the connection, so I went and read what the actual connections to The Wizard of Oz were and kind of how this film was going to resolve itself.
No spoilers for part 2 because I don't know it.
Okay. But the thing about this movie is that while the musical numbers are very good, made me think about La La Land a little bit more in terms of how much I appreciated how much of a showstopper the first song in La La Land is on the highway, and how much of a really well-staged showstopper that is. But I found that the movie was oddly shapeless for me, because the central conflict of this movie is down to 2 parts. One is Elphaba and Glinda's relationship, which is kind of resolved fairly easily through the scene that you're talking about, which is the dance. And I think that scene was the emotionally moving scene for me, because I think Cynthia Erivo plays that so well. It's a really difficult thing to do, but she plays that moment so internally, and it reads, and that's
fuels the entire thing.
And that's the hard thing about what she's doing as an actress. But then the other conflict in the movie is this sort of storyline that is also about otherization, and has plenty of direct parallels to where we live today as well. Perhaps inadvertently, but perhaps advertently as well. But this idea that the animals are being prevented from speaking, and I found that narrative was a little hard to track and a little hard to figure out what it meant to the entire world, because essentially that part of the story is saying the world of Oz is changing as we know it, and it's turning darker. And when we get to the end of the film, and the spoiler of the film, it's kind of just hand-woven away in this movie. Now, I'm sure it is part of a grander narrative that is happening through part 1 and part 2, but it made this movie as an experience, for me, looking at it as a movie, slightly shapeless.
You know what's interesting on that point? I was trying to think why, because I normally hate exactly what you're talking about, the part 1-ness of it, and I'm like, well, then this isn't done, and whatever. I get mad at it. This movie, I was not mad at the part 1-ness, and I fully expected to be. And I think the reason I wasn't was a bit twofold. One, the ending of this movie is exquisite from the presentation format of it, and then it does feel like a natural ending, or in a weird way, a Empire Strikes Back kind of thing. Yeah. But then 2, you could, and you're right, the animal bit is sort of like they say 1 or 2 things. I thought the animal thing was kind of ham-fisted throughout the whole way through, so I was just like, oh, okay.
But it is the central conceit of what is changing in this world. It's the reason.
It's the reason she gets on the train.
Yeah.
They sort of half-ass it,
and I think
the musical too.
And I think the thing is, in an ordinary movie, the notes would be is that if that is changing your world, then that's the thing that needs to drive the movie, and it doesn't drive the movie here. And I think
it's the B plot.
And I think for me, the thing there is that I'm gonna accept that that's okay, because people love the movie. And people love the experience of the movie because I think it harkens to the kind of the musical experience of it.
But then it also gets to sort of my second part that I was going to say, which is the reason why this could just end here and that animal thing can sort of drop as easily as it does for me, is you can take the end of this movie and go right into The Wizard of Oz. The way that the word, I know Oz changes obviously in the second act of this movie, but I also feel like I can interpolate what happens between now and the Wizard, because there's
some big steps between this and the Wizard of Oz.
But here's the thing: so all the animals, all the animals in the Wizard of Oz are kind of messed up. They have a lot of problems and feel like they've been repressed in a lot of different ways. And so if the problem that is not resolved here, and this movie ends, and then I watched the Wizard of Oz, I'd be like, oh man, shit got bad. Okay, cool.
I think there's this movie is directly telling an alternate narrative to The Wizard of Oz, and there will be some crossover between this movie and The Wizard of Oz in the next one.
What I'm saying is, for what is presented to me, I don't know what's in Act 2.
Yeah.
I'm saying, from a narrative perspective, I can take the end of this movie and
felt comfortable.
And I felt comfortable rolling into knowing that it could be they could easily, if The Wizard of Oz from 1939 started and just had 5 years later. And I was like, cool.
I don't want to spoil what happens between.
Please don't.
But I think you're gonna. But what I can say is, I think you're gonna love it.
Cool.
I think you're gonna love it.
But I guess my point is, I think that's why.
Really.
Nick made a face.
Yeah. So I'm very torn in a probably assholey way about the part 1 and part 2 of this.
Yeah.
I don't love it.
Yeah.
For all kinds of reasons, right? Part of me loves it, and if I didn't have at least one of my kids who will go and want to go see part 2, my problem with the musical is I really enjoy and love Act 1. I never liked Act 2. But this is not just a Wicked thing either. Like, there is so much in music theater history, and I think after seeing more of, not even necessarily how the sausage is made for musicals, but like, people usually spend a lot more time on Act 1 in the making of a musical, in the making of most things, than they do on the ends of them.
Video games are the same way.
Yeah. And often they're rushing the second act to get it,
right,
like, because they've got the premiere coming up and like yada, yada, yada. Like, as far as Wicked, there are a couple very good songs in Act 2. There is none of them, I don't think anyone would say, except for maybe one of them, is even in the top 5 songs of this musical.
But as far, and that probably will throw me as well. But as far as because Matt, you kind of mentioned how this movie connects to The Wizard of Oz and whether you could do that. And I think for me, the thing that was interesting was reading about all the things that were set up in this movie to eventually pay off to what their connections are to Wizard of Oz in the second movie.
Yes.
There are a huge number of connections.
Sure. But what I'm saying is I can take the plot from the end of this movie and go into the Wizard of Oz, and I would get it. I'm sure it does twists and does other things and does other ways to entangle it. I'm saying, I think as just someone who doesn't know that, I was able to just be like,
just from a timeline point of view, the Wizard of Oz essentially comes in midway. Dorothy appears midway through the second act of Wicked.
I'm not saying anything.
But
why are you
no spoilers.
So, but
just in terms of like where they line up.
But that is a spoiler. Let's be very clear.
And this movie did have a moment from Wizard of Oz. Yeah.
Yep, you saw.
And the liquid, which if we are friends of or familiar with the Wizard of Oz, know what that means at the beginning of the movie.
Totally. So. But I think, I also have some hope, because even with the animal bit, if I recall correctly, and I saw the musical a long time ago, I read a little bit about it. I wanted to go back and see what was different, and what I think it's a shortness, a kind of strange scene, the bear nanny scene at the top of this one,
real cut,
but that is not in the musical.
Right,
like, that's something they added. I think that helps the animal.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Be somewhat real, because it's got an animal in an important role ish. At least
we're also
thematically important,
but we're also uncertain. I guess the storyline of the animal plot is one we see. What is the name of the professor? The goat professor,
Peter Dinklage,
Dillamont,
yeah, paid by Peter Dinklage. Is a storied professor at Shiz.
Yeah,
and
I'm sorry, the name Shiz.
Yeah, I know. But at some point there's a sign on the wall that says animals should be seen and not heard. Yeah. And there's a kind of a plot in place to silence animals. Now the mechanics of that plot are confusing to me, because we're not sure if their voices are literally being taken away or if they're just being kind of silenced, and it's hard to kind of
at least what they're trying to do. What they do in the musical, and I think they did here. I mean, you see him starting to lose his power of speech. He does way more goat-y things.
But is that a magical thing?
Unknown.
Right.
At this juncture.
Yeah.
But I will say this though too, because like the bear scene, I think there were some definite improvements to the story that this movie had.
Yeah.
And one of them is that dance scene in the middle. Because I was like, did that happen in the musical?
The libraries? Oh no,
the dance scene
dance at the school,
at the Oz Dust Ballroom.
Yeah.
And in the she comes in with the hat on and is thoroughly embarrassed and does this dance, but Glinda doesn't join into it in the musical.
Oh, interesting.
And
really?
No, it's she starts laughing at her, and then Fiyero in the musical, Fiyero goes he's like, she just doesn't care. She's like, can you believe she's doing that? That she looks like, can you believe that? I think she gives a shit. And
right.
She says, no, she does, but she doesn't want to say that. Like it's a powerful moment in the show, but the movie that is so much better. It hits you like it hit me like a ton of bricks, tears flowing, and just like it was beautiful.
That was the moment that explored what the movie could be.
Yeah.
You know, like that was the closest I got to like really latching onto an emotional tether to the movie and sensing it. Then they kind of become quick friends, and there's a dance. You know, Popular is a great number.
Yep.
But it's, you know, like it's sort of like the dress up montage of the movie. And the sort of meeting of the wizard. It's fun to see Jeff Goldblum in this.
He doesn't Goldblum too much in this.
He doesn't. Great.
He doesn't go. And I think the other thing is that the movie does seem to sort of touch on this idea of like, you know, it may be just a moment that we're living in right now, but like how to control a population. You know, like the idea of
is very much about that.
Yeah,
too.
and The Wizard of Oz is very much about that. There was a Sam Raimi film a few years ago, the Oz, the Great and Powerful. You know, which like explores that idea, and that's central to Frank Baum's novel as well. Is like the idea that there's nothing behind the wizard. He's just a man. And the kind of propaganda he has created in order to control the population, to have control of the world that he's created.
Not at all timely.
Not at all timely in this moment. But, you know, like I responded to that idea as well. But I think, so those are the things I kind of responded to, and they felt a little bit scattered and you know, just sprinkled throughout. And I think
the monkeys getting wings are basically tariffs, right? That's what we're saying. Is that kind of what we're putting together? Because I think it kind of works.
It's an oddly terrifying moment on screen, and you're sort of you know, Star Wars has a little bit of this as well. It's like, what is the balance between magic and propaganda?
Sure.
In this one?
Hey, listen, Elphaba didn't look up what a tariff was before she gave the monkey tariff.
But like, there's magic in this world, right?
Sure.
There's magic in this world. There are wizards.
A little. Yeah. There's very little.
But the central character of this universe is very, you know, the central conceit of the movies or the books is that he is not magic.
Yeah.
Right. But I don't
think he is.
No, and something I didn't know going into this, for whatever reason, I thought that like they were both going to like magic school. But it's not just a magic school.
It's Harry Potter quality to it.
Well, Harry Potter is a magic school. That's what Hogwarts is. But this is not that. This is like there's like social studies.
But Michelle Yeoh,
she's the professor of of magic stuff.
But she even says like, I haven't taught that class in years.
Yeah, but like there's like agriculture and there's law and there's all this other stuff. And then I was like, oh, okay. But then I'm like, well, Glinda's a witch, right? And Glinda has, in this movie, and again, no spoilers to anybody, has no power at all to do anything. Nope. And it, you know, in the beginning, because we see the flash forward,
only social power.
She's floating down in a bubble, and
you're gonna tell me she's not a witch, bro?
I guess. Like, so I don't know. I found that shocking, and it was a nice surprise.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, I'm a big John Chu fan now. Right. I think I was already. I love Crazy Rich Asians.
I was a John Chu fan since G.I. Joe Retaliation.
I never saw it. I need to go back and see it.
It's pretty good.
Musical theater is kind of like cinematic musical theater is kind of
and action figure movies apparently.
And I loved In the Heights.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. I thought the dancing in this was fantastic. I just loved how he uses sets. Like he does a big musical number, and I love that he hired people who could actually sing and actually dance, as opposed to La La Land, as opposed to even like Chicago. Like Catherine Zeta-Jones is good in it, and Renee Zellweger is good in it. Richard Gere's okay, and like he's fine, right? Yeah. But like this went for it, and he was doing a big movie musical, and he went for it, and I appreciate the spectacle, and I hope that he improves the second act.
Yeah, I think it will.
Like he improved this first act in some ways. I do worry. Like I do think a nice edit to edit a good 20 minutes, 30 minutes out of this would have been good.
So here's something. Here's why I have faith, even though I haven't seen the second half. I've heard people say the second half is the weaker half, the one that they don't like as much. Yeah. But what sells me on John's sort of ability to do this is weirdly how Oz is treated in this movie. And by that, I mean the actual physicality of the places that they're in. There is so many practical sets in this movie. And I know there's digital extensions and tons of work going on around the sides, but there is something when you are singing and dancing in a space. I think cats can teach us this. That there is a power to having your cast in a space. They built that library.
That library, I thought for sure it was fake when you go in, and maybe it was in the beginning.
There's extensions and things.
Yeah, but the spinny things, I thought for sure that was not real. But when they used them in the dancing, I was like, wow.
So
it kind of reminds me of your Spider-Man Goblin kind of analogy. Yeah. It's like the moment when you fly through it is like, oh, this is real.
Yeah. I feel like truly that is one of the reasons that grounded me and made me happy to sit through this for 2 hours and 40 minutes because the entire Oz, a place that has never felt real to me, I bought in and was like, all right. But I was like, oh yeah, no, this is good. These people are standing in this courtyard. These people are standing in these woods. These people are standing, in the throne room or the tower at the end. I was like, this all feels, and then the very end at Defying Gravity, obviously that's when a lot of the in your face, the CG you'd expect in a Marvel movie kicks in. Yeah. And it has so much power in that moment because we didn't see that all throughout the thing. The movie built that giant CG moment to be Elphaba's moment. And it really made it truly shine as a beacon at the end of the thing.
And I will say that leads into my second true beef.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Defying Gravity as a song is one of the crowning achievements that humans have done in music theater.
Right.
It is such an incredible piece of music. And I think can I swear? Is that?
Yeah.
I think they fucked it up.
It's
because they broke it.
They broke it into two, right?
None of those, they broke it in 3 or 4. They took so many pauses in the middle of it that for me, and this is, I'm sure this is partially because I'm just in love with the song and how it was originally. So some of this is old man yelling at kids off his porch.
Yeah.
I was going to say, stop doing that. Your daughter seemed to like the breakup.
She loved it. Completely. And I think, for me, it lost some momentum, and that drove me a little crazy about it because I was like, you just built this, and then but you're just stopping it. That said, and again, all that practical stuff, when they went to such wonderfully ludicrous lengths for her cloak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When she goes to the sky, and they do this in the musical to a similar fashion. When her cloak is 48 feet long, that was I was like, whoa, that's when you're Fritz Lang. You're deep into it at that point. It was so cool.
I think the thing that you're talking about there is also the challenge I have with the movie as well, which is that it's trying to, for me, the difficult thing here is define itself as a movie as well as really pay homage to the fact that it is a musical and people know the songs and people know the story and are here for the songs and the story, here for the and what the story is. And that moment is where they sort of start breaking it up as though the songs are part of a narrative, so it's got this. There was one of my favorite music videos from years ago is this Left Field music video where they basically would play the song as background music through a story.
Yeah.
There was a Spike Jonze music video for Daft Punk where he was dressed up as a dog, and they would do that as well.
Yep.
He would walk into a bodega and the music would be broken up.
It would just be this through the speakers.
And it kind of feels like that kind of quality where they're trying to find ways for the movie and the musical to kind of sort of cohabitate the space a little bit.
Break up conventions.
Break convention.
Trying to make a force push against it. Possibly defy gravity.
but I mean, as an entire experience, one of the things is I could certainly see in the audience people who are here for the numbers and who knew the music, inside out, and we're here for it to be staged beautifully, and it is staged beautifully.
Yes.
I think for me, as a person who struggles with musicals in general, and this is a me problem, not the musicals problems, but I tend to find musical numbers in most movies challenging in so much as I kind of feel like the movie stops.
Except for the sweetest thing.
Except for the one in the sweetest thing. That's right. 100%. Yeah.
So what I'm learning is it has to be
a penis song. It has to be about a penis.
Well, I mean, and I think part of that comes down to you better make it fucking good.
Yeah.
You better make this biggest spectacle that you can imagine. Like, this better be the best singing and dancing. Like, that's why, like, those, what is it, Buster, who did like the swimming ones, like some of the greatest like movie musicals.
Oh, Busby Berkeley.
Busby Berkeley.
Yeah.
Like the Busby Berkeley, or like, again, Gene Kelly.
Yeah.
Like, Gene Kelly is like, he's not just going to do something you would also do on stage.
Yeah.
He's going to find a way to make this something you could only do in a movie.
Yeah.
And they did that. They did such a great job with that here. And if I could do one more nerdy kind of movie thing.
How dare you?
Like, one of the other things I love about it is that I think that they found a really happy medium between live recording and some pre-recorded bits that suited it and didn't bog it down. Like, Les Mis.
Les Mis did this as well with Russell Crowe.
Was the first one that did it, as far as I like, or that did it.
That told everyone that they did it.
Yeah, that told everyone that they did it.
Yeah.
And like invented some technology to help them do it. And I think they used some of that here. And it made, like, again, Les Mis the movie. I love that music. I love that musical so much. That movie, not so great.
Yeah.
But
same director as Cats.
Yep, totally. But that Anne Hathaway performance is, for me, again, one of the greatest like musical moments of movie. Like, I think it enabled one of the best performances caught on film. But there's other parts of it that are terrible because of it. Like, right? But this one, it used it really brilliantly, and especially in the hands of Cynthia Erivo.
Yeah,
who could take her time and in some moments like interpret these things in ways that you cannot do in the Broadway show.
Yeah,
you cannot do in a show 8 times a week. You can't. The conductor and the orchestra won't follow you. Like, as the alpha, you better plan out your shit and hit your beats.
Yep.
Like, they did things you cannot do on the Broadway stage.
Yeah.
And I'm glad they did.
Yeah, because they're adapting to the medium. They're using strengths of it to do different and new things. And that's really fun. I think I'm going to bring it to my beef. I feel like I've been overly positive. So Sheer, you were talking about, like, this might be for the people that are into it for the music and the acts and stuff. And it was weird because I came into this thing expecting to be like, it's fine. And I really, really loved it. I didn't come to it for the musical. I have no history of it. And, like, I think that brings an odd, not a less found perspective for people going to see this movie than the majority that are probably doing exactly what Shahir is describing. But then I was thinking about it. And for this franchise, for this piece, Wicked, being such a cultural phenomenon that it is, I am shocked that truly none of it has ever been spoiled for me outside of these two meet in college. Okay.
Yeah.
And I was trying to pick apart why that was, because this is a gigantic IP. I have a side idea in my head. The Wizard of Oz might be the most generationally transcended piece of pop culture cinema. I know it's changing, and now with Wicked, it'll add on again. But, like, as an IP management exercise, it's a really interesting thought.
Maybe
experiment.
The single biggest impact on pop culture,
like across generations.
The first movie, is such a huge touchstone for cinema and for,
and it lasted so long because of it. Like, when we were kids, it was still a big deal.
Yeah,
and that's crazy now. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting off point. The point that I noticed that I didn't vibe with this movie, actually, I don't think is the movie's problem. I think for me, it's the musical's problem. I loved the actual score. I loved the people performing it and singing the songs, and I loved the sets and the design and the choices and the direction and all the cinematic tricks that we've been talking about that sort of elevate it for the medium that it's in. I'm sorry, everyone. I thought the only and the weakest link of this entire experiment is the lyrics of the songs.
Ooh, this is your area.
I know, and listen, I know we can debate it.
Go.
I am not.
I'm gonna step away for a minute, and I want you guys to go at it.
I am not a musical aficionado by any means of imagination. My partner Jamie in the other room would probably she could run circles around me in this conversation. But I'm looking for things that sort of connect with me. And this comes from when this musical was
85.
The
book is 85.
The book is 85. It was let's see, 2000, 90, probably 97. Let's see if I'm right.
Well, yeah, share if you want.
I'm Googling right now.
But, like, it comes from a time where at least musicals in my periphery have a very, like, it moves away sometimes from the singing happens when the emotions have gotten too big, and now we're going to explore it in a deeper, in meaningful, different art form, right?
Yeah.
And goes more towards, I'm going to sing what's going on right now. And I've never vibed with again, Popular is, from the musical perspective and the arrangement, is a banger. But like, it is just sort of like hitting these very, I want to say, paint by number, sort of like, it's the makeover scene, but we're singing it. Mm-hmm. And I, again, in this movie, I don't want to do it any discredit. Every performer, both musically and lyrically, is fucking killing it. It is exquisite. But I think the reason, I'm going to go back to it, why this movie's plot and the general things that happen in it were not spoiled for me, was because, unlike other musicals that I'd heard Hamilton before I'd seen Hamilton. Mm-hmm. And so I knew everything because it was just things that transcended outside of musical theater to get to my space. I think because these aren't the lyrics with things that I like, that I personally vibe with, it never entered my algorithm, my circle, my anything. And that is sort of what has kept this story and musical itself sort of sequestered from my media landscape. And it's weird because, again, it's a phenomenon. I should have heard bits and pieces of the music and the stuff because other things have come into my zeitgeist. And I wonder if just my proclivities, my taste, the things I search for, the things my friends know to show me, etc., plays against me in this case because it didn't come to me.
Maybe. That's certainly possible. I think there are all kinds of reasons why, like, Hamilton is more part of our central culture, became more. But so many things as far as like streaming was huge when Hamilton came out. It was so easy to get to it. If you had to go buy the CD, I don't know. If YouTube culture wasn't around, like I don't know. I would say for this, like I mean, obviously I disagree. I think the lyrics are pretty phenomenal. If there's one criticism I would give is that I think he might try to do so much wordplay in it that it's just showing off. Like it's like, aren't I good at this?
Right.
Like I do think if
Hamilton does that too.
Yeah. but almost that plays into it.
You're right. That's part of the story.
Because Hamilton's a show off. Yeah. So like, of course he's going to show. But in this one, like he does so many like that reward multiple lessons in that, like you say, like, oh, that's clever as fuck. Like you see these things that he does, but like it's almost like it almost takes you out of it. You're so looking at the trick that you don't that you don't just aren't along for the ride. I think he's a phenomenal lyricist, and even with like,
well, I liked his other stuff too, like in the things you've described before in his other work. But but
like that, I'm Not That Girl. Like there are so many songs in here that where he cuts
excellent lyrics in that.
Like he cuts to the core of it. I mean, Popular is there because I bet it wasn't even there in the first workshops of it. I bet it was Kristen Chenoweth was so good. I bet Glinda wasn't even as big a part. She was so good, and they're probably like, this act sags around here.
Sure.
Like what we need, like after the Ozdust ballroom scene, like, well, we're all a little exhausted. Like
we need a
song here. Yeah. We need a dress montage. Yeah. So I think that is that. And I think so many things. It was like plug this in to get the audience back up again. We need something between the Ozdust and the Defying Gravity that is Glinda's, or like it was like so many, like Book of Mormon.
Yeah,
I don't know if you guys have seen it.
I have not. No,
it's tremendous. I love it. But they're like a buddy of mine was in the original cast, and like his song that his character played like wasn't there initially. They just loved him and they wanted something in this moment, so they wrote this song.
Nice.
But that's so much in the making of a musical. Like it's this long drawn out thing that all of a sudden at the end is like, okay, fucking hurry up. Like I mean, even in Hamilton, they talk about when like Lin-Manuel wrote some things on the bus on the way to perform parts of them, like as they were putting it up at the public.
Yeah.
Like he was writing stuff like leading up to the tech rehearsal. Like it's anyway. But to each their own, right?
And I'm not trying to convince anybody that these lyrics are bad. Yeah. I'm saying for whatever reason, I think the type of lyric and what it was one of the reasons why it actually did stay out of my zeitgeist for a minute.
What are some lyrics like? What's an example of a lyric or some wordplay in this that really spoke to you? I think maybe I'm Not the Girl is I'm not that girl.
I don't know if I don't think I know all of those, but like. Defying Gravity is one that I like. I've heard so many times, and I love it. Like I
oddly, the one that I had heard out of this was Popular.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's such a earworm.
Yep. It's so great.
Yeah.
I mean, like when I think of him, like also Pocahontas, like Colors of the Wind.
Yeah. Yes.
Is one of the greatest lyrical works of mankind.
1,000%.
Like it's so brilliant in the way he turns, but like, something has changed with me. Something is not the same. I'm tired of playing with the rules of someone else's game.
Right.
Like I'm tired of playing solo. Like it's like he just does so many turn, like, or in The Wizard and I, like he does so many things to turn around and to like, in the musical you start with like no one mourns the wicked, and this thing it's like the effigies being burned.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then he does so many clever things to play and foreshadow. They're like little in jokes. So like like she has this vision of like, and someday everyone in Oz will be celebrating me. And you're like, and like these different things that he does and he plays with them, and it's just so clever. But like even the like popular,
I don't want to say that. Sorry, I'm not trying to poo-poo specifically on popular. It was a lot of different things, but then there were moments, to your point, of I thought it was very, very clever that the someday everyone in Oz will be celebrating me. Like that, it was funny. That was like a moment where I was like, hell yeah, excellent foreshadow or back shadow, depending on what we're talking about. And then, but at the same time, it was never, the lyrics of these songs were never the things that like. Again, it's not, this part isn't for me, but it's not like, I will sing, and I'll back up. The first movie musical that I fell in love with when I was a kid was Evita.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love Evita.
And Evita, those songs have weirdly stuck with me, and I used to sing that mowing my lawn as a kid, like whatever.
100%.
And I don't know, I can't
have
the background to what?
Did Evita mow her lawn?
No, but canonically no. I don't have the earworm for my own like brain space, I guess, quality that those lyrics had.
I mean, there's something again. I haven't been looking at my phone like in popular like I think it's like, when I meet distressing or distressing creatures with unprepossessing features, like he's so good at internal rhymes, like, or when she's like, like when she talks about, like people in histories, like, great leaders in history, like, did they have brains and knowledge? Don't make me laugh. They were popular. Like she said, and like, who she, like, I mean, this was written a long time ago, talking about all kinds of people.
Oh yeah.
But like, I think he weaves it so well, and you buy her saying it, and yet it's bullshit, and she's like missing it, but right at the same time. Like that's really hard to have someone making a point that is so close to being right, but isn't, or that, but like you can tell they believe it. Like that's hard to do. Like, and that's to me, like that's some high art of that particular song.
I just particularly like the enunciation of popular, and then just the way she plays with popular,
like and not the dreary who you were or are, and then she was popular, lar, like he just does so many cool word plays in it that just, and I would say, and I think Kristen Chenoweth does it a little bit better. Ariana Grande does it great, but I think Kristen Chenoweth does it a little better because it's music theater pitter patter stuff. That is so much about the delivery.
I want to say I agree with everything you were saying. I still don't know why it did not click. And listen, here's the thing.
So get to that too. Yeah.
Oh no, I'm just gonna say this also could be a case of me not being familiar with. Well, no, Evita did it for me. I guess what I'm gonna say is this: I will obviously watch this movie a few more times.
Yeah.
And I might change my view of it, because maybe all the grand spectacle that I said I really engaged with, the sets, the performances, all of that stuff, put against songs that I am not used to, with all of that there, maybe I wasn't catching all of the things.
It rewards multiple listens. It just like Hamilton did, right? Like so much of it. And I will also say, I heartily recommend, seeing it again for sure, but listening to the soundtrack, because before I saw this movie, obviously I'd seen the musical, I've listened to the musical out with my family. Yeah. My daughter was wanted her friend was having a birthday party. They were going to see it. She had a basketball game out in the Rockaways.
Right.
Ah.
So since she couldn't go to the movie, we had a 45-hour long drive. And so we listened to it twice in there. And the songs are even better just listening to them, especially because they
can focus,
and they cut out the defying gravity breaks. They tighten it up so it's back the way It should be. But it rewards. But as far as like why, I think there's a couple reasons probably why it didn't make as big an impact, at least in your experience. And to be honest, on mine, until like a friend of mine's family brought me to see it in 2003. Right.
By the way, that's the first year it was staged.
Oh, so I must have seen it in 2004 or 5.
Yeah.
So no, I may have seen Idina Menzel in it. I'll have to look back. I still have a playbill. I'm a hoarder.
You're that guy. You're that guy.
I think partially some of it is like, again, I don't know how old you are, Matt.
117.
But like for me, it came. So I got super into music theater in late middle school and all through high school, and then like through most of college, and then I was then I was broke and I wasn't listening to as much of it, and I was so in love with the stuff I was in love with. The new stuff came out. I was skeptical. I wasn't as into it. But I think also some of it's like the difference of what Broadway and theater was at the time, and probably where you were in your life.
Oh, sure.
And all that kind of stuff. But I look forward to hearing like if you change your mind on any of this the more you listen to it.
I do think it is entirely possible that I will. Like you can see the building blocks of it, but I was shocked how down with everything but that I was. Yeah. And that was not my expected take of seeing this movie and experiencing it. I don't know. It was weird. It was neat.
So for me, just to round out my final thoughts on that, I think for me, I have a particularly high barrier to entry when it comes to musicals. Yeah. Just flat out, that's kind of a challenging thing.
Penis.
Unless it's got penis songs in it. One note about that film is that it is the only musical number in that movie. There are songs. Yeah. But so that's my barrier to entry. Just one song, please.
Whenever you go, that is cut out except in the Australian version.
So like we go to a musical, like we went and saw Aladdin together. I was like, just one song. And that's a whole new world. That's it. That's all I need.
The Broadway musical.
Yeah, we did. We saw the Broadway musical. So I think I have a higher barrier to entry as far as this goes. I can appreciate for people that love the musical, this is a really grand staging of the musical. And oddly for me, the way that Disney handled Hamilton in terms of just presenting us a stage play version of it with some really, really good editing, but it really was just like, here is the play, really worked for me as far as a cinematic experience goes. And I think for me, there's a sort of a second barrier to entry on this, which is the part one of it all, which is that I even when I went to read how the story kind of concludes itself, I thought, oh, that's a really clever reworking of the Wizard of Oz mythology and what we can do with it. And I thought there was a lot of really interesting things about that kind of come in part two of this. And I wondered about this being one movie. Now, the one movie of it makes it a movie. The two movies of it makes it a musical. And that's where I think the difference is for me. I think it plays as a musical, for people who like the musical as two movies. For me, I was kind of like, I think the story could be one movie.
Very well. I mean, I agree with you. I don't love that it's two parts.
Yeah.
I don't care for that aspect of it. And I don't like musicals generally, you're in and out in 90 minutes usually. Sometimes like 2 hours if it's a Les Mis, like 2 and change, something like that, but really long one.
But this is like 2 hours and 40 minutes for part
Act one. Yeah. Act one. This is longer than the whole musical.
Right.
And it's so great. And they add so many wonderful things. I think they improve it in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But I respect that. And I think I don't know if I would have liked it as much if I weren't with my daughter and my sister-in-law.
Yeah.
And to be honest, if I hadn't the weekend before, so I work with like a lot of theater nerds, and so many of them saw it opening weekend. I saw it the second weekend, and they came by with such rave reviews. Like I really wanted to, it set me up, and I think they loved it more than I did.
Yeah,
but that partially is by, even though I'm a music theater nerd, I'm also not the target audience.
Yeah,
which is like interesting, like,
but that's okay. The other thing,
great.
The other thing
that's
to kind
wonderful.
of walk away from, like that's been happening this year as well, particularly for me. We went and saw Deadpool. Did we go see Deadpool and Wolverine together? Did we?
We did.
I don't remember.
We did. Because it was troubling.
That's right. The kids in the theater thing.
The small children.
I've heard. We've heard
these stories. We have seen it. You know what? We have seen a lot of movies together, by the way.
We have.
But I walked out of that movie going, this is not for me. I'm just not the audience for this movie, and that's okay. And there was a sort of a similar feeling in
You were like, this might be the fall of Rome.
I did recall. Yeah, I did say.
You said that Wicked was the fall of Rome.
No. Deadpool and Wolverine.
Oh, the Deadpool and Wolverine
was the fall of Rome. Yeah. I might stick.
This is the downfall of our culture. But
Wicked, I was also
to be fair, our culture is downfalling at the same time. It got a lot of money, but I don't know if we can put the direct.
We are not defying gravity. Let me tell you that much. But
we're defying gravity.
But I also thought Wicked was not for me in not so much in the demographic side of it, but more in that I don't love musicals, and I haven't really watched this musical. I think the experience of watching this movie is heightened by knowing the songs ahead of time, by having potentially having seen the musical beforehand. Like, I think coming in like I did was a barrier to entry for me. You know, like it was like, okay, I like some of this, but I don't love all of this.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, that's a challenging thing. Like, I would be interested to see how they do the second half.
Yeah.
And whether that kind of, like when we did Dune 1 and Dune 2, which is like, okay, now we've got the complete picture of the whole thing. You know, when we reviewed Dune 1, I was like, I like what I've seen, but I don't know what it is I've seen because I've only seen like a truncated version of this entire story.
I disliked where Dune 1 ended. It felt like a weird spot, and it felt like they ran out of time and we'll see you next week. This just felt like a natural ending to me, and so it was like, cool. Anyway, my final thought is, it's interesting you had that experience here because, like, I think my not having a familiarity with it
helped.
Actually helped, and I don't know. I just vibed with it real hard after not knowing what the hell it was for so long, and I dig it. I recommend everyone go see it. It's an absolute blast.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I've had my quibbles like most things, but I love how big it was, and I hope that it opens up doors for more movie musicals, for more grand movie musicals.
It does kind of harken to the sort of Technicolor musical, you know, like of the 50s and 60s, you know, like those really grand.
And there are so many
the West Side Stories of it, you know,
And there are so many great movie stars who can pull a lot of this stuff off. Like Hugh Jackman, right? Zac Efron.
You know who's underrated in this field is Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
He can sing and dance.
100%. Like now Cynthia Erivo, I hope she does some more. There are people who can do it, and I hope that we get a chance to see it happen more.
Yeah. Well, I hope Cynthia Erivo's Batman.
Yeah, I do as well. You know, just the other thing is you were mentioning the sort of the Frank, the value of the IP in this sense. I did go. The thing that this movie prompted me to watch was Return to Oz, which I watched.
Okay, that exists, right?
Yeah,
it's the stuff of nightmares.
So hold on, in my brain. It feels like a fake Mandela effect thing, like it doesn't exist, but everyone thinks it does. There's a Pumpkin Man, right?
There is a Pumpkin Man in that movie.
Part of.
Do you remember the Wheelers?
The Wheelers.
Do you remember the Princess Moby? I think Moby.
Here's the thing.
The Headless.
I feel like I've never done drugs.
You've never returned to Oz?
But yet I feel like that movie is the closest that I have.
So interestingly, I think I saw Wizard of Oz at film school, and I saw it under the sort of auspices of this is the auspices of this is a grand piece of cinema, and it is important in the history of cinema, particularly in the way it handles color, the black and white.
You've seen the second one though?
Yeah. But then but the film I actually watched growing up was Return to Oz. And so I had that on repeat. Yes. And I
this explains a lot about you.
Yeah, it does. It's like, and like when I watched it, I was like, oh my God, this is a lot of my childhood. And it is traumatic. Like that movie is dark, and it is really committed to the idea that Dorothy, when she came back from Oz, she experienced like heavy trauma. Like the first 20 minutes of this movie is about her getting electroshock therapy.
Yeah.
And like a really, you know, like it is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest for a little while.
Yeah.
But then it turns into sort of like a very 80s, 90s kind of version of Oz, which is that it's Technicolor, but it's kind of dark. And it's like, you know, it's
Oz, but New York in the 80s.
Yeah.
It's bleached out. It's scary as fuck.
I met Walter Murch, who directed the film,
really?
at a film festival once, And I talked to him about it for just a few brief moments. And he was talking about the fact that he had TikTok, or the studio still owned TikTok. Not the app, but in Return to Oz, one of the central characters is a wind-up machine man. By the name,
going to be banned in the United States pretty soon.
Oh yeah, whose name is TikTok.
Yeah,
and he has 3 levers: one for his action, one for his thought, and one for his speech.
Yep.
And Walter Murch said something along the lines of like that they still had it in the studio and it was collecting dust, but he went in every now and again and wound it up just in the hope that like it would still be there, it would still be doing its thing. It was so cool, and like that, like. Yeah, you're kind of right. I did some reading about Frank Baum. Like this was his grand masterpiece, and he kept trying to repeat the phenomenon, and it didn't quite work. There were many books about
many Oz.
There are many Oz books, but none of them quite hit the highs of the Wizard of Oz. My favorite story about him that's in the Wikipedia page is that kind of like I think like Disney, he was sort of thinking about like how can I capitalize on this, and he at one point convinced told the public that he was creating a Land of Oz amusement park, and that he had purchased an island off the coast of California to do this. And the island was called Penelope Island or something like that. Okay. It's in the Wikipedia page. And then people started doing the research, and this island has never been found. And like he basically did The Wizard, which is that he made up a grand story that everyone believed for a little period of time. Fun. And it was wild that he kind of did that. And that you're right. It made me think about how big this world is. And I guess, like in many ways, it's like Lord of the Rings. It's like The Lion, the Witch, the Wardrobe. Like it's got that sort of scope to it. And it's got such a there's a lot of potent ideas in it. Particularly the central idea about who the wizard is and how he has come to rule this magical place of Oz, is really ripe for the picking. Like I can imagine TV shows off of this. I can imagine a whole lot
100%.
And it's great.
And very Mark Twain-y, like very Connecticut Yankee, King Arthur's Court, but like darker.
Yeah.
And I remember there's a John Ritter plays Frank Baum in a TV movie about him. And I remember seeing it as a child. The only thing I remember is like he's in a doctor's office, or he's in some kind of office as he's trying to come up with a name for like the Wizard of Oz, like for like and like he's looking at the file cabinet. Yeah. One of the file cabinets is like O to Z. Like, I don't know if that's actually what happened.
I think that is that might be apocryphal, but that is the story.
Yeah, it's funny. Thing. I was doing research for another project and I was like referencing Max Headroom, and the story about how he came across the name Max Headroom was that the author went to the hospital and he was being wheeled under, and that was the sign, Max Headroom.
Headroom.
So maybe this is like a common thing, which is like the name
go to the doctor's office.
Go to the doctor's office, and there's names of all our characters.
Well, this has been the only podcast about the film Wicked.
Clicked.
Not Clicked. Nick, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This was a pleasure, gents.
When you are not gracing us with your presence, where can folks find you all over the interwebs?
They can find me on Twitter. I guess it's called X. At Nick_Lowe_. I'm on Blue Sky as well. Trying to figure out how to do that as well.
It's better.
Give us a plug for a Spider-Man book that everyone should. If you love Spider-Man, what should you be reading?
Oh wow! I mean, Spider-Man is the best. Like let's see, we're right in the middle of this big story called The 8 Deaths of Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. It puts Spider-Man into like a magical stuff, but I've been loving what we've been doing with Spider-Man lately. The Amazing Spider-Man has been somewhat controversial, but I think really good. There's a Spider-Man book I don't work on that is one of the biggest publishing phenomenons right now called Ultimate Spider-Man.
Yep. I'm waiting. Is the first trade out yet?
Yeah, the first trade just came out.
Okay, that's what as you can see, I only do trades, so I wait.
But Jonathan Hickman and Marco Cacchetto, but that's great. But I would say, like, if you want to pin it down to just one, I mean, the original Ultimate Spider-Man, long running, incredible. Brian Michael Bendis, Mark Bagley is tremendous. I worked on part of the middle of it, but not the beginning. But it's tremendous.
Yeah.
But this is such a joy. You guys are the best.
What you were saying before, you do role playing stuff places too.
Yep. I'm part of the Glass Cannon Network. I'm on Legacy of the Ancients and a couple other things.
Hell yeah.
But I also write little jingles and bits for them as well that you'll hear kind of throughout as it goes along. But
we didn't find the time for all of this stuff.
Awesome.
I just don't sleep very much.
No, I relate to that. Shahir, when you are not defying gravity. Where can folks find you?
You can find me falling down the eternal pit that is our social media platform. But go to my website at suvanova.com. That's SUVANOVA. Matt, when you are making me more popular, where can people find you?
You can find me over, let's see, on my socials. I'm Matthew Kroll at nebula.tv on Blue Sky. I am Skeletor, the number 4 PREZ on Instagram and PSN. And of course, please check out all of our good works over at Extra History and Extra Credits on the YouTube machine. I believe by the time this airs, we will have released our Christmas episode over there about the history of the Yule goat.
Ooh. The Yule goat?
It is a phenomenal, I won't even spoil what it is, but it has to do with a lot of different things and different, there is a famous place in the world where there is a giant wicker goat. And for whatever reason, even though it is highly illegal and people have been jailed, every year people try to destroy it and succeed a lot and cause a lot of fires. But there's a lot of history to goats and winter holidays. And there's a fascinating look at that. Our writer, Robert Rath, who was just on our Gladiator 2 episode, did a phenomenal job with it. So please go check that out.
I had assumed it was about Yul Brynner, the goat of
No, close. Also, I want to shout out something over on the extra credit side of things. If you're listening to this and you are into anything esports related or just video games in general, we're working with a thing called the Good Game Project, which is a study that is sponsored by the European Union and a bunch of colleges and things, which is basically looking at mental health statistics and facts about people that engage with video games and esports. And in 2018, we did this cool thing with this gentleman, Michael, who wanted us to do a survey for him to get more people to listen to take it for their research projects. And the extra credits community showed up in droves and they did all this thing. Cut to now 2024. He's Dr. Michael now. Whoa. And he is working with the EU and a bunch of other places. So it's like our second run with this. That's so cool. You can actually, in a couple minutes, you can do some really good for hopefully tools for parents, players and coaches of esports teams on how to make it more sustainable, more basically a less toxic environment and help the mental health of these people that are playing these games. So please go take that and fill it out. I'd very much appreciate it. You can find it on the extra credit site. We dropped that actually today on the day this is recorded, so it will still be up by the time you get there. Next week,
there's a lot of cool stuff out right now. I would still love us to go see Flow.
If it's around.
Flow is around right now. You can go visit Flow. Yeah, no, I'm not going to make that joke.
You just did by saying that. You just did.
There's a lot of really cool, and there's a bunch of movies that I'd love to catch up on. Like one since Coleman Domingo's kind of making the rounds right now is his movie Sing Sing, which came out earlier in the year, which is available on VOD. But email us in, onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com. Tell us what you're watching. Tell us what we should be watching. Tell us why we shouldn't be watching certain things and why we're bad at reviewing things or why we're really good at reviewing things. We have a few.
I prefer the second one.
Give us what you got.
Yeah.
There's a couple of emails. Oh, actually, a movie recommendation that came in this week. It was a movie that actually has been on my radar for a while. Is Hundreds of Beavers.
Yes, I've heard it's great.
Yes, when I was on Movie Struck, so if he was talking about that.
Yeah, everyone's talking about Hundreds of Beavers right now.
Great.
It's supposed to be a lot of fun. It just hit Blu-ray, so it is much more accessible. The person that wrote us that in was like, you got to get this one before your 2024 best of year list. And I was like, don't you worry, we're not doing that till like August of next year.
Yeah, we're very late on that.
But yeah, lots of cool stuff to see right now. Awesome. Not just the Glickeds. I mean, are we going to do Moana 2 to really fill it out? Another musical number?
I don't know. I haven't seen it. I don't know. I think Moana is a pretty perfect movie, and I don't really want another one. So
where were you with this with other franchises?
Well, sometimes I don't think the movie is perfect, and they could do more with it. I don't know. But anyway, all right. We'll talk to you next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.